He was the wisest man who ever lived, yet his wisdom could not save him from himself. King Solomon had wealth beyond imagination, power without rival, and a mind sharper than any in history. But behind the splendor of his throne was a slow, dark descent that shook the kingdom of Israel and changed history forever. What happens when wisdom is ignored, when compromise takes root, and when a man chosen by God trades truth for temptation? Stay with me to the very end, because Solomon's story isn't just ancient history. It's a warning for today, and the lessons could shape the choices you make right now.
Near the end of his life, King David, once the mighty warrior of Israel, grew weak and frail. From his bed, he summoned his son, Solomon, the one chosen to inherit his throne. With his final strength, David spoke words of instruction and warning, to walk faithfully before the Lord, to obey his commands, and to rule with justice. It was not wealth or power that David emphasized, but obedience to God. These final words would set the stage for Solomon's reign.
In the courts of Jerusalem, the sound of trumpets echoed as priests and nobles gathered to witness a new beginning. Solomon, still young but full of promise, was anointed with oil and crowned as King of Israel. The people shouted with joy, declaring him their ruler. For a moment, Israel stood united, blessed with peace and prosperity, and hope for a golden age under David's son. As Solomon stepped into his kingship, he knew the weight of the crown was greater than gold or jewels. The responsibility of ruling God's people pressed heavily on his heart. One evening, Solomon entered the sanctuary, knelt before the Ark of the Covenant, and prayed with sincerity. He did not ask for riches, nor for victory over enemies, but for an understanding heart, to discern right from wrong, and to lead God's people with wisdom. That night, in the stillness of his sleep, Solomon encountered the Almighty. The Lord appeared to him in a dream, offering him a gift beyond measure. Because Solomon had not sought power, wealth, or long life, but wisdom to govern faithfully, God granted him wisdom greater than any who came before or after. Yet God also promised him honor and riches if he remained steadfast in obedience. From that moment, Solomon's reign was marked with divine favor. News of Solomon's wisdom spread quickly. One of the earliest and most famous moments came when two women were brought before him, each claiming to be the mother of a single infant. Their cries filled the royal court, and the truth seemed hidden. The people watched in silence as Solomon's sharp mind sought the hidden motive of each heart. His judgment would reveal whether his wisdom was truly from God. Solomon then made a shocking command to bring a sword and divide the living child in two, giving half to each woman. Gasps filled the court, for such words seemed harsh. Yet in the heat of that moment, the real mother cried out, begging for the child's life to be spared, even if it meant losing him to another. The false mother remained silent. With this test, Solomon unmasked the truth, returning the child to his rightful mother. The people were stunned, knowing no ordinary king could judge with such wisdom.
From that day, the people of Israel looked to Solomon with awe. Word of his judgment spread through every village, and his name became synonymous with divine wisdom. Farmers, merchants, and nobles alike spoke of their young king who carried the fear of the Lord in his heart. A deep sense of security filled the land, for they trusted that justice would prevail under Solomon's rule. Solomon began to organize his kingdom with precision. He appointed governors over the tribes, officials to record history, priests to serve in the temple, and wise men to advise him. Each detail reflected order and structure, ensuring that Israel would function as a powerful and unified nation. What David had built through battle, Solomon established in peace. Yet Solomon's greatest task was not building armies or palaces, but the house of God. On the very mount where Abraham once prepared to sacrifice Isaac, Solomon laid the foundation stones of the temple. Thousands of laborers worked in harmony, cutting stones, carving cedar, and overlaying beams with gold. Their songs rose with the sound of hammers, for this was to be a dwelling place for the Almighty Himself. After 7 long years, the temple of the Lord was finished. Its walls glistened with gold. Its doors stood tall and strong, and the Ark of the Covenant found its place in the most holy place. The people gathered in reverence, their eyes wide at the splendor before them. It was not merely a building, but a symbol, God dwelling among His people, a promise of His presence in their midst. As the priests carried the ark into the inner sanctuary, a cloud descended upon the temple. The glory of the Lord filled the place with such power that the priests could not even stand to minister. Israel stood in awe as heaven itself touched earth. In that moment, Solomon knew this was the pinnacle of his reign. The Lord had accepted the house built for His name. Before the altar, Solomon lifted his hands toward heaven and prayed with deep passion. He asked that whenever Israel sinned and repented, God would hear their prayers from this place. He prayed for the foreigner who came seeking truth, for the soldier who went out to war, and for the people who faced famine or drought. His words revealed a king not only wise, but compassionate, interceding for his people before the Lord. As the years passed, Solomon's kingdom flourished with prosperity unlike anything Israel had ever known. Silver and gold became as common as stones in Jerusalem, and cedar wood was imported in abundance. Trade routes stretched far beyond Israel's borders, bringing wealth and treasures from every direction. The people lived in safety and abundance, each family under its own vine and fig tree, a picture of peace and plenty. Under Solomon, Israel reached its golden age. Solomon's reputation traveled far beyond Israel. Kings, merchants, and nobles came from distant lands, eager to hear the sayings of the wise king. From botany to philosophy, from governance to the mysteries of life, Solomon spoke with unmatched knowledge. He wrote thousands of proverbs and songs, his words flowing like streams of understanding. Many left Jerusalem amazed, declaring that wisdom itself had found a home in Solomon. Among the many visitors was the famed Queen of Sheba. She traveled with a grand caravan across deserts and mountains, bringing spices, jewels, and gold as gifts for Solomon. She came not only with treasures, but with questions, eager to test his wisdom. As she walked through Solomon's palace, saw the order of his servants, and listened to his words, she realized the rumors had not told the half of the truth. Overwhelmed, she confessed that Solomon's wisdom and prosperity surpassed anything she had heard.
In those days, Solomon's glory reached its height. His throne, overlaid with ivory and gold, stood as a symbol of majesty. His courts sparkled with riches, and his banquets overflowed with delicacies. His fame extended across nations, and rulers bowed in respect to the King of Israel. It seemed as though the promise to Abraham, that all nations would be blessed, was unfolding through Solomon's reign. Truly, the world had never seen such splendor. But wealth and fame brought with them a silent danger. Slowly, Solomon's heart began to shift from the simplicity of his first devotion. To secure alliances with foreign nations, Solomon married many wives, princesses from Egypt, Moab, Ammon, and beyond. These unions brought not only political strength, but also the gods of their nations into Jerusalem. What began as diplomacy soon became temptation, as Solomon's heart was drawn away from the Lord who had blessed him.
As the years went by, altars began to appear on the hills outside Jerusalem. Shrines to Ashtoreth, Molech, and Chemosh rose where once the name of the Lord had been honored. The smoke of pagan sacrifices polluted the holy city, and the king who had built the temple for God now tolerated idols for his wives. The same lips that had once prayed for wisdom now permitted abominations before the Lord's eyes. The golden age of Israel began to darken with shadows. The Lord, who had appeared to Solomon twice, sent warnings through prophets. God reminded Solomon of the covenant, that if he walked in obedience, his throne would be established forever. But if he turned to other gods, judgment would come. Yet Solomon, intoxicated with riches, alliances, and pleasures, closed his ears to the warnings. The man once known for wisdom now ignored the very source of wisdom, his God.
Because Solomon turned his heart away, the Lord began to raise adversaries against him. Hadad the Edomite stirred trouble from the south. Rezon of Damascus grew in power from the north, and Jeroboam, a servant within Solomon's own kingdom, rose in defiance. The peace that had defined Solomon's early reign began to crumble. Israel, once united and secure, now trembled under the threat of division and rebellion. In secret, the prophet Ahijah met Jeroboam and delivered a startling message. Taking a cloak, Ahijah tore it into 12 pieces and gave 10 to Jeroboam, declaring that God would take most of the kingdom from Solomon's house. Only the tribe of Judah would remain for David's sake. This prophecy signaled the beginning of Israel's fracture, a wound that would never fully heal. Solomon's sins were planting seeds of division that would soon split the nation in two.
As Solomon's reign dragged on, the golden throne became a weight of iron.
To sustain his palaces, his building projects, and his luxuries, heavy taxes were laid upon the people. Forced labor became common, and resentment grew among the tribes. The joy and celebration of his early years faded into murmurs of discontent. The people who once marveled at their king now felt the cost of his excesses. In his later years, Solomon looked back upon his life with weary eyes. Surrounded by palaces, wives, and wealth, he realized that all his pursuits had left him empty. The wisdom he once cherished seemed wasted, and the glory he once enjoyed had become a burden. Out of this sorrow came his reflections, recorded in Ecclesiastes, that everything under the sun is vanity, a chasing after the wind. He declared that the end of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At last, Solomon's reign came to an end after 40 years on the throne. The king who began with humility and wisdom died with a divided heart. Though Israel buried him with honor in the city of David, the shadows of his choices lingered. His son Rehoboam would inherit the throne, but also the consequences of his father's sins. And so the golden age of Israel closed, leaving behind a warning. Even the wisest man can fall when his heart turns from God. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam inherited the throne. But Rehoboam did not inherit his father's wisdom. The young king's prideful heart and harsh words drove the people to rebellion. What had begun with Solomon's divided heart now spread like fire across the nation. The seeds of disobedience had blossomed into division, and Israel would never again be united as it once was under David and Solomon's early reign. In a moment that changed history, 10 tribes of Israel rejected the house of David and followed Jeroboam. The once great kingdom split into 2, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. What had been built through decades of peace and prosperity shattered in a matter of days. Solomon's sins had opened the door, and the nation bore the consequences. The golden crown of Israel now rested upon a fractured people. Though Solomon was gone, the idols he had introduced remained. Shrines on the hills and altars to foreign gods tempted the people to worship what his king had once permitted. The shadow of Solomon's compromise lingered for generations, leading Israel further and further away from the Lord. The consequences of one man's disobedience echoed through time, shaping the destiny of an entire nation. Israel's neighbors no longer trembled at the sound of Solomon's name. The glory of the golden age faded into memory, like the setting sun. The palaces and treasures remained, but the favor of the Lord had lifted. Once the envy of nations, Israel now faced wars, betrayal, and decline. What had been built on wisdom was undone by folly, proving that without faithfulness, no throne can endure. The story of Solomon stands as both an inspiration and a warning. His rise shows what God can do with a humble heart, bringing wisdom, peace, and blessing beyond imagination. but his fall shows the danger of pride, compromise, and forgetting the Lord. The wisest man who ever lived became foolish when his heart drifted from God. His story is a mirror, reminding us that no amount of wealth, fame, or power can substitute for obedience. Solomon's life whispers a call across the ages. Guard your heart above all else. The Lord desires loyalty, not divided devotion. Just as Solomon's compromise brought idols into Jerusalem, compromise in our own lives can bring idols into our hearts. His story warns us that wisdom without obedience leads to ruin, but faithfulness leads to life. The Lord who gave Solomon wisdom is the same Lord who calls us today to choose Him above all else. And while the golden age of Solomon has long passed, the eternal kingdom of Christ is near, unshakable and full of glory. The story ends with this truth: honor God, remain faithful, and your life will shine brighter than all the gold of Solomon's throne.
If this story opened your eyes, don't just scroll away. Take a stand today. Hit like if you believe wisdom without God is nothing, and subscribe to join us on this journey through the greatest stories ever told. Together, let's learn, grow, and guard our hearts before it's too late.